Welcome back to the Lines College Football Podcast. I'm Brett Gibbons with TheLines.com, and as always, I'm joined by the one and only Kelley Ford. Kelley, welcome back. We're talking Saturday college football, a loaded slate. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling great, Brett. Saturdays in November. Listen, fall Saturdays, I love them. There's no two ways about it. I make that pretty clear just about any time I'm talking, tweeting, whatever. Saturdays in November hit different than Saturdays in any other month for me, and that includes December, when you've got conference championships and bowl games, and January, when you're playing, well, they don't play the national championship game on a Saturday, but it hits different for me in November. This is the money time. Everybody's getting up. Stakes are high. Rivalry week is just a couple weeks away. We're going to get there. I don't want to skip over all the great games, but I can't wait for that one as always. I'm excited, man. It's the stretch run. We're tired. We're exhausted. So are the players. So are the coaches. Everybody. But snow is here. That means it's college football. Let's do it, dude. I can't wait.
Yeah, you said rivalry week is that's a hard thing to say.
It is a hard week.
It's teed up for a couple more weeks, but hey, I'm not going to make you guys wait. We got a big time rivalry that we will get to. But before we get into it all, don't forget to follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. I am at Road to CFB. You can see my Maction travels, my snow globe Maction travels. And Kelley, your work can be found at K Ford Ratings. We'll be here every single week for the remainder of the college football season, breaking down the Saturday slates as well as individual weeknight games. If you're looking for Week 10 weeknight games, you can find it on our YouTube. It is up there. We're in the double-digit weeks. That makes me kind of sad, but like you said, there's no better time than college football in November. We have our first college football rankings of the year. Ohio State number 1, maybe a surprise some, certainly a surprise to me. And bowl season prep has begun in this household. We're not going to skip over, but we're there. Anyway, our first game on tap, we have number 25, Kansas State on the road at number 7, Texas. Those are the AP poll numbers. I did not update with the college football playoff. That's probably my fault. But anyway, Texas, a 4-point home favorite in this game, carries an over-under of 50.5 points. Kicks off at noon Eastern on Fox, getting the day started right, This is a massive, monumental game in the landscape of the Big 12 that I'm sure your numbers will get into. Texas has won the last 6 in a row here, and also the last 5 that have been played in Austin. I think the market really underrates Kansas State. Maybe not in this exact example because of the point spread, because Texas is missing starting quarterback, stuff like that. But they've lost on a 60-yard field goal to a top 15 team in Missouri, and then they lost one game to an Oklahoma State team that's on the upswing in Stillwater. That's a difficult place to play. And all of a sudden, everyone just writes them off. I mean, shoot, they just climbed back into the rankings, which to me is ridiculous. And they think it's ridiculous too, because in their last 2 games, they've beaten TCU and Houston by a combined score of 82-3. They are going full scorched earth. Now, I don't know if we're going to get another 40-something-0 game this week, but they do have a new quarterback on the scene. Kansas State does, that being Avery Johnson. He's their second highest quarterback recruit ever signed in Manhattan. And in his debut, he rushed for 5 touchdowns. So this kid's pretty special. He's been playing really well. He is still splitting snaps, though, with Will Howard. It's a very situational thing, but Chris Kleiman is making it work. They're doing, I think, a really terrific job with it. On the other side, Quinn Ewers, he's still week to week with an AC sprain in his throwing shoulder. Malik Murphy was okay. I guess he was fine. Didn't really light the world on fire versus a defense that let Josh Hoover light the world on fire. So I think I would have liked to see a little bit more from Malik Murphy. But it's new. He's thrown into the fire. Didn't expect to be starting. Texas is on in at least 3-back rotation, I say, because they're led by Jonathan Brooks, but they also have really talented freshman CJ Baxter, who I think is going to be special for many years, and also Savion Red, who gets worked. And fun fact, Texas has a Savion Red and a Jadon Blue in the running room, so I think that's just kind of funny. Not actionable, but funny anyway. Kansas State, really good against the run. They're 12th in EPA, 18th in success rate allowed. They played some really good rushing teams too. TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech lately has been pretty good in the ground game. I'm interested to see how well the Wildcats fare in this game. The last few outings have just been, look, we're bigger and more talented than you, and we're just going to run the ball straight at your face. And I'm not sure that's going to fly against Texas.
Growing up in public schools in Indianapolis, Brett, red and blue, like are Crips and Bloods, is that still a thing, or are we all like past that? It's something we haven't thought about in a long time, right? So that's what I think about when someone says red and blue to take us away from college football. Bringing us back to college football, Brett, you mentioned it. now that we're officially into CFP top 25 season, I'm going to give a quick comparison between the CFP rankings and my most deserving ranking for any top 25 team that we discuss. I'll do the article that I do for thelines.com every week too, and that'll really break down the biggest differences. But for these teams, they're both in the committee's top 25. Both are underranked by 3 spots for me. I'd have number 23, Kansas State, at number 20. And the committee's number 7, Texas, at number 4. I'm going to spend more time on Texas here because the difference between 20 and 23 is not that great. The difference between 4 and 7, at least in December, is huge. The Longhorns are 5th in record achievement. There's only a 19% chance that the average top 25 FBS team would be 7-1 or better against Texas's schedule to date. And the Longhorns are 10th in relative scoring margin, outscoring their opponents by 8.3 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 FBS team. If I'm a Texas fan, I'm upset that my team isn't in the committee's top 4, but there is a long way to go. Brett, quick aside, my biggest takeaway from the committee's show was they're still using bad phrases, talking about ranked wins, top 25 wins. Like, that's still bad. It hasn't changed. I did like that the chair called it the Red River Shootout. I thought that was great. He didn't conform to the showdown or rivalry or whatever else they're trying to call it. But my biggest concern with the committee's rankings, Brett, and I know that's not what this show is, so really quickly, they just group teams by number of losses. Like 1 through 5 are undefeated teams. 6 through 14, I think it was, is 1-loss team, or 13 are 1-loss teams. And then 14 to 23 are 2-loss teams with a couple G5s at 24-25. Like, to me, they looked at the losses and they said, all right, let's stack them up with the knees. Like, no, we have better ways of doing it that we can differentiate between teams that have the same or even different records. One can be more deserving than the other. So I don't want to get too worked up about it because it's the first one, but we've seen the first rankings serve as somewhat of an anchor for some teams moving forward. So I would hate to see a team be punished or unjustly rewarded for an initial ranking from the CFP. Anyway, that's too much about that. This game has a watchability score of 9.7. It's the number 2 game of the week for me. I'm very, very excited about this game, Brett. It's going to be awesome. Between this game and Bedlam, which I have a feeling that's the rivalry game you were referencing earlier, we're going to have a much clearer picture of the Big 12 championship game race after this week. Right now, it's a little muddy.
Maybe.
I think either way,
to which it gets worse.
Either way, I think we're going to have some clarity. Whether it's the clarity we expect or not based on spreads, that's a different discussion. But just we got to start seeing how these teams shake out with their wins and losses because right now it's just a cluttered mess, which I absolutely love. The winner of this game will have approximately a 3 in 4 chance to make it to Arlington, so pretty darn good, while the loser will have approximately just a 1 in 4 chance. We're at 50% leverage. That's absolutely massive for just one game if it's not the last game of the season, right? So the winner will remain in the college football playoff picture as well, especially Texas. I know Kansas State's pretty far down there. They're still in the picture. They got a big hill to climb. I'm really talking Texas here. But the loser of this game, even if it's Texas, will find it tough to make the 14 field. So there's a lot on the line here in Austin. I have Texas minus 5.5. It's a 65% win expectancy for the Longhorns. However, it should be noted that the injury, week-to-week status of quarterback Quinn Ewers, that's not explicitly factored into the model's projection. The model's been pretty dialed in on Texas this season. Longhorns have been between number 6 and number 12 overall every single week. The offense has been between number 8 and number 16 every week but one. And after the beginning of the season, at number 16, the defense has been between number 4 and number 12 ever since. This team is legit, might be the best team in the Big 12 Conference. Kansas State's power rating of 19.1, corresponding ranking of number 12, are both season best. This is the 12th best team in the country by my power ratings right now, Brett. They are certainly surging, and it's coming at the right time. My power rating suggests that this Kansas State team's actually better than the 2022 team that won the Big 12 championship, Brett. In fact, the last time Kansas State finished number 12 in my power ratings or better was when they finished number 6 in 2012. That's when Colin Klein, current offensive coordinator, led the Wildcats to really just being one upset loss at Baylor away from a spot in the BCS National Championship that game on his way to being a Heisman finalist as well. Kansas State's defense has been largely what the model expected this year. They entered the year number 25. They're currently ranked number 23, but it's the offense that has performed much better than expected. They started number 26. They are now up to number 11. As a result of that offensive improvement, Kansas State's power rating has been upgraded 8.3 points, Brett, since the preseason. Only SMU, Jacksonville State, and Oregon have experienced a larger in-season upgrade than the Wildcats. For as nice of a year as it's been in Manhattan, Texas does represent the best offense, the best defense, and the best overall team that the Wildcats will face all season based on my current numbers. My model gives the Longhorns the advantage on both sides of the ball, and this game is in Austin. Bottom line, my numbers project Texas -5.5. It's a 35% chance that Kansas State ends its 6-game losing skid to the Longhorns, as you mentioned, Brett, and earns its first win in Austin since 2011. I was in high school, Brett. No, sorry, that would have been freshman year of college. Still, been a long time.
Look, to talk to numbers, I don't love the ambiguous 4. I feel like that's always a number odds makers kind of lean on when they're like, that's probably within a score. I'm not really sure which way, though. Let's let the market decide. And so they just hang a 4 or a 4.5 or a 5, and then they let the market sort it out, which it will, but probably not until Friday or Saturday. So I'm going to be really, really patient, especially in the Big 12 with Texas, with Oklahoma, teams like that. The last minute, and I truly mean last minute, within the 45 minutes leading up to kickoff, that movement has been dead on with how the game goes. We saw it last week with Oklahoma, Kansas. Kansas took a ton of money very late and won outright. We saw it with the Red River, where Oklahoma took a lot of money late and they won outright. So keep an eye on this market. Be diligent. I'm holding because I want to see where it goes. If it moves to 7, then there's way too strong of a market influence for why it went there, and I'm probably not fading it. There's probably not a reality in which I bet Kansas State, to be honest. If it moves lower than 4, then I'm probably going to jump on Texas. And yes, fade that late market steam, like I said, probably not to. Although I really haven't been impressed with the last 2 outings. Just because you said that your model does not account for Quinn Ewers, I docked him 3. I think I'm being a little bit conservative with that. I probably could have gone more, but 3 points is is how much I took off them. All right, moving forward, we have Jacksonville State at South Carolina. South Carolina, a 15.5-point home favorite in this game, carries an over-under 55 points. Kicks off at noon Eastern on ESPNU. Guys, there is a reason I put this one on here. I didn't just put it in for laughs. It's because I bet South Carolina with the points, and I'm pretty. I have strong conviction about this. Look, they're not playing the best football, but let's be honest here. This is SEC versus Conference USA. And I know purists in the sense of the group of 5 is on level with the Power 5. Guys, that's not true. I love all levels of college football, but I can also recognize there's a massive talent disparity between these two teams. There's a pretty strong correlation this season between teams that run super fast paces, like the top pace in the country, and points allowed, believe it or not. USF, they run the fastest pace in the country, 119th in scoring. TCU, the 3rd fastest pace, 54th in points allowed, and they played some pretty bad offenses. Colorado's number 4, 116th in scoring allowed. Utah State, number 5, 115th in scoring allowed. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into that. It's not just because they run fast paces, but I'm of the belief that we've gone too far. You want to run tempo, you want to run pace, but when you run too much tempo and too much pace, you gas your defense because they're out there all the time, and you get points hung on you. In Jacksonville State, they seem to be, I'm putting quotes around that, the exception because they're 28th in scoring. The difference, their opposition. Teams that they have beaten this year average 102nd in points per drive. Games where they played better to offenses like Liberty and Coastal, they gave up 30-plus each time. I would go as far as to say South Carolina, probably a little bit better than Liberty and Coastal. South Carolina is not a top half points per drive offense, but they have just far more talent than Jacksonville State's other opponents. Xavier Legette is probably the best player that Jacksonville State will see on a football field this year. Do note, though, there's no Juice Wells for South Carolina. He has a long-term injury. We may not see him back this year. And for South Carolina, one thing that actually I think does matter a little bit, there's no wiggle room for bowl eligibility. They're 2-6, so they have to win out to make it. They have Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Clemson. It's not impossible. I'm sure your numbers will paint an exact picture of what their chances are to make it, but you know that South Carolina has to win this week and leave no doubt. So I think South Carolina going away is for me.
I thought, Brett, you put this game on here because this is the battle of the Gamecocks, man. Like, how many chances do we get to say that? I thought that's why it was here.
I think 0 in FBS.
Yeah, I think so. I think going
to
Gamecocks.
The first one.
Yeah. This game has a watchability score of 5.2. I have South Carolina minus 12.5. It's an 81% win expectancy. It's been a disastrous season for Shane Beamer in Columbia, Brett. My preseason realistic expectations projected 5.8 wins with a 57% chance to go bowling. South Carolina fans yelled and screamed at me. They said I was crazy. I go on radio every week with Mark Ryan down in South Carolina, and those South Carolina fans are not big fans of Kelley Ford. At least K Ford Ratings the model. I guess they probably don't like Kelley Ford the person either because they can't disassociate. But like Gamecock fans, I'm looking at you right now. Brett, you said it. You need 4 straight wins just to reach a bowl, a feat that my numbers assign a 12% chance to happen. So you didn't like when I was saying it's 57%, 5.8 wins on average, and now I think you would take what my preseason projections were in a heartbeat. Like you said, Brett, could still happen. 12% chance is what my numbers say. The good news for Gamecock fans is that the Jacksonville State offense is the worst FBS unit the South Carolina defense will face this season. South Carolina should have an advantage when their number 35 offense, the best unit is in the game, is on the field as well. Really quickly on Jacksonville State, at 7-2, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, have 3.4 more wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected through Week 9. That's good enough for number 1 on my overachievers list, Brett. Granted, this was a tough team to project given their transition from FCS to FBS. I've talked about that before. I learned a lot from James Madison last year, tried to apply that learning to both Jacksonville State and Sam Houston this year. I got better, but still have more learning that I can do. And those two teams having drastically different seasons, as we know, Jacksonville State and Sam Houston. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the transition was. Like I had a preseason expectation that I felt decent about. It's been an awesome year for the Gamecocks. This defense now ranks number 66 nationally. It's a defense I had a lot of concerns about. They've been phenomenal, especially on that side of the ball. So bottom line, my numbers project South Carolina minus 12.5. It's a 19% chance that Jacksonville State wins this game against its toughest opponent of the season.
Yeah, and you talked about their defense being a lot better. I agree. When I was scouting them in the preseason, I mean, my under ticket on their wins is already out the window. I saw not a lot of size, not a lot of talent, but, dude, they're athletic as heck. They are not as athletic as South Carolina, period. That's why I'm betting them going away. Moving forward, but still staying in the SEC East, we have number 12, Missouri. I did fix the rankings, by the way. I did put in the college football playoff ones. Number 12, Missouri at number 2, Georgia. Georgia is a 15.5-point home favorite, and this game carries an over-under of 54.5, which is important because it was bet down through 55, which is the most key figure when you're talking about college football totals. It kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern in its rightful place on CBS. I am kind of sad we're losing the SEC on CBS, but hey, whatever. I absolutely love this matchup this year. This is one of my favorite games on the entire college football slate, even though we have a multi-score spread. And this is also, I would say, Georgia's probably toughest test yet by a sizable amount. I don't think Florida's really any good, and Kentucky's not really any that good. And here we go, Missouri. Yeah, they're, we remember what happened last year, but we'll get to that. Missouri does have a rest advantage, but they do have to hit the road, which does negate that a little bit. Georgia didn't really have to break a sweat against Florida last week, so I'm not going to come in and say, well, they played a rival, so they're going to be... No, they just rolled right over them. My question is, have we entered Georgia rolling up the sleeves territory? Especially, and we knew this was going to happen, especially when they don't get ranked number 1. They're going to be using that when they come into this game. I mean, they kind of feel like a NBA team, like one of the super teams, though, like Golden State, like the old Miami Heat, where they only turn it on when they need to. They're not taking every game seriously, but boy, when they play Florida, when they play a ranked opponent, is it roll up the sleeves and I'm just going to beat the heck out of you? I am worried about that a little bit. If we're talking about Missouri's quarterback, Brady Cook, he's 3rd in the SEC in yards and passer rating. He's having a terrific year. And it certainly helps to have Luther Burden, who is, if it wasn't for Marvin Harrison, maybe the best receiver in the country. He has 20, Brady Cook has 20 big-time throws. That's tied with Jane Daniels for the SEC lead and also 3rd most in the nation. So we're talking about how good he's been excellent. I think his passing style and the offense that Missouri's running this year is conducive to Georgia's defense in that he's the lowest average time to throw in the SEC. He's not going to let the pass rush get home in that time, certainly not. But will that continue with Georgia's coverage is my question. They've allowed decent games to alpha wide receivers like Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette. So, Luther Burden is going to get his because they just run him across the middle of the field, say, here's the football, make 11 guys miss, and he does from time to time. Last year, Georgia held Missouri to peanuts except for Dominic Lovett, who they then went and took in the transfer portal. Please stay in Missouri, Luther Burden. It's so much better with you there. But I think that the Tigers' offense is much better now. Look, Brady Cook's improved. They're actually using Luther Burden well. Last year, it was maddening to see their inability to use him. They bump him into the slot. Now he's outstanding. That said, Missouri's defense, nowhere near where they were last year. That is an objective fact. But Carson Beck has been quietly outstanding, and he hasn't really missed a step since losing Brock Bowers. I questioned that, said, hey, can he still hit those intermediate throws? Yeah, he's playing really well. Missouri is 78th in EPA per pass allowed. Better quarterbacks have found success against them, like Jane Daniels, Will Howard, Seth Hennigan. But the last 2 games, they allowed 120 yards and picked off Devin Leary twice, and only 217 yards and picked off Spencer Rattler. So they've been playing well as of late. But I'm interested to know, what do your numbers say about this? If it wasn't for Bedlam, this would probably be my favorite matchup of the week.
This is a great matchup, Brett. And yes, I'm excited about it too. SEC on CBS, afternoon window. It makes me sad it's going away too. I'm enjoying it while we have it because I do feel like that's the rightful home of this type of game. The committee has Missouri number 12 and Georgia number 3, as you mentioned. I won't complain too much about the Tigers. Georgia number 2, as you mentioned. I won't complain too much about the Tigers. I'd have them number 11. But Georgia is overranked for me. I'd have them number 7. The Dogs are number 7 in record achievement. There's only a 26% chance the average top 25 team will be undefeated against Georgia's schedule to date. Number 11 in relative scoring margin, outscoring their opponents by 6.8 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 team. Brett, I know what you're saying, and I know they're going to use that motivation of not being number 1. That's disrespect, all this. I get it. And if a committee put them where I would, it'd be like off the charts, outside of this world disrespect. They would never do that. I knew they wouldn't. But give me a reason that Georgia is ranked in the top 4 without mentioning 2-time reigning national champion. Like, that was even mentioned last night about this team's a 2-time reigning national champion. Like, great. Those championships are incredible. They are amazing accomplishments for the Georgia program. They have nothing to do with the 2023 Georgia team. That's who the committee's supposed to be evaluating, supposed to be ranking. Brett, I'm just saying, I wouldn't have them in the top 4, let alone at number 2.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I should be upfront with this. It's not a bias. I don't know, maybe it's a logic fallacy, whatever it is. I'm a big, especially with teams like Alabama, with teams like Clemson, with teams like Georgia, it is prove to me that you truly are changed, that you are worse. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue trusting the program, the coaches, and of course that led me to bet Clemson to win the national championship this year. But anyway, I could be stuck in that rut with Georgia. I do just want to put a hand up and say, hey, that is a possibility. Go ahead.
I don't disagree that this team is better than their resume suggests. But what are we doing if we're not ranking resumes based on the field this year in 2023? Like, to me, it's unfair to Florida State and other teams, because I'd have Florida State number 2. It's unfair to everyone except for Ohio State that Georgia is number 2, because I think there are other teams that deserve to be ranked ahead of Georgia, even if my numbers would favor Georgia on a neutral field against those teams. It was the same thing with TCU last year. TCU was not one of the 4 best teams in the country. They were like number 9 or 10 in my power ratings, but they had a top 4 most deserving resume, and they got in as they should, and then they pulled an upset, and more power to them. That's awesome. Like, that's why you put the most deserving in there, because anyone can win. But if we're just going to go with who do we think is the best team, just let Vegas do it. And why are we playing the games? Like, that's my takeaway. There's a long way to go. This game has a watchability score of 8.2. It's the number 1 game of the afternoon window for me. It's easy to understand why. An inside track to Atlanta out of the East Division is on the line. For Georgia, it's simple. Win and book your travel down the road for a 6th trip to Atlanta in 7 season. But a win for Missouri would give the Tigers the all-important tiebreaker and make the game against Tennessee and Columbia next week that much more important. Brett, I have Georgia minus 14 in this game. It's an 84% win expectancy for the Bulldogs. The Dogs were number 1 for me in the preseason power ratings, based largely on how good had this team been in recent years, how much were they bringing back, all those things. They fell out of the top spot after week 3. Last week, Georgia was a season low number 10, but after a thorough beatdown of Florida, as you talked about, the Bulldogs are back up to number 6 this week. So this is a number 6 power rated team. And to be honest, they'd probably be favored, and I would even personally take them maybe to win against a couple teams that I have power rated above them. That's just what the numbers say right now. The offense is ranked a season best number 6. The defense is currently ranked number 7. It's been a great season for Missouri. Like, there's no two ways about it. 7-1. The Tigers have 2.2 more wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected through week 9. That's number 6 nationally on my overachievers list. And at number 24, this is the highest I've had Missouri power ranked all year. It's the best team we've seen in Columbia since the Tigers finished number 15 in my power ratings in 2018. The offense is currently power ranked to season best number 17, and the timing couldn't be better for this unit to be hitting its stride because Georgia's number 7 defense is the best opposing defensive unit that Missouri will face all season, Brett. And it's not just the defense. The Georgia team overall is the best that Missouri will face all season based on my current numbers. While Missouri does have the rest advantage, as you mentioned, after being off last week, my numbers give the edge to Georgia on both sides of the ball, with the biggest advantage assigned to the Dogs' offense against Missouri's number 28 defense. Plus, as we mentioned, this game's in Athens, where Georgia hasn't lost since 2019. Remember, that was an overtime shocker to South Carolina that year. Could we see another game like that here? Maybe. But bottom line, I have Georgia minus 14. It's a 16% chance Missouri earns its second ever win against Georgia. The Tigers are 1-11 all time and on a 9-game losing streak in the series.
Yeah, this season, every time I see a larger point spread against Georgia, I'm at least a little bit intrigued to fade them. But again, they've shown that they put their foot down when necessary. And I think that this is a put the foot down when necessary week. Now, is Missouri less talented enough for that to be, like, they can just turn it on and say, nah, you're done, 40-point win or whatever. Now, one thing that I am looking at that I think does matter, that as humans we cannot escape, I think a lot of people are going to be baited into Missouri after going off last year's opponent. I think that's why the number is 15.5 instead of 14.5 or 14. I think they want people. I know this. A lot of people say, "Wow, they set their lines." I do think that there's a little bit of gamesmanship behind this line. That was an outstanding Missouri defensive effort that I don't think they have in them this year, no matter how good the offense is. But instead of betting the point spread, I think I lean under. I did actually grab it at 55.5. It has moved through with 55, which kind of sucks. If you're looking to bet the under, definitely try to wait until 55 pops. If you absolutely can't get it, it's probably still an under for me as long as this thing doesn't crash before kickoff. The word I want to use for this is smushed. That's kind of what Georgia's defense has done to offenses in games that they really care about. They just kind of sat on them, like a big brother bullying his little brother and just being like, no. So I could see that happening in this game, even with Luther Burden, even with as well as Brady Cook's been playing. That's something I do worry about. So I'd probably lean under the point total as opposed to taking either side on the spread. Okay, here it is. Bedlam. Number 9, Oklahoma. A 6-point road favorite at Oklahoma State. This game carries an over-under of 61 points, which has actually come down midweek. This game kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Would have loved to see it in the 7:30 slot, but I'm not going to be picky about this one. This is potentially the last Bedlam ever. From the sounds of it, it is. And Mike getting Oklahoma State, they're pissed about it and the way that's ending. And I totally get that. And this is one of the premier staple rivalries, and I'm hurt to see it go. But if you're Oklahoma, I understand why you don't make too much of an effort to continue this. It's not even really a rivalry on their end. They've won 91 games and lost 16. Like, it's just it's a little brother trying to fight the big brother. That's whatever. Either way, I think that the motivation that Oklahoma State has about this game, the fury that they bring, the vitriol that they're bringing to this, changes the calculus of it. 3 of their 5 Bedlam wins since 2000. I mentioned it's not much of a back-and-forth rivalry. They won those at home. It's expected to be breezy during the game with winds over 11 miles an hour. If you've ever been out to Stillwater, you know there's a breeze pretty constantly. This was going to be an Oklahoma State play for me all season until Kansas upset Oklahoma last week. I worry a little bit that that's the wake-up call. I don't think it was a look-ahead spot because Kansas was ranked. They're a team that's given Oklahoma fits. They're very good. I don't think it was a look-ahead spot. But that may be a wake-up call that Oklahoma needs to step up, button down on defense. Whether they can or not remains to be seen. And I also don't think it's all of a sudden just Oklahoma's just bad. I think watching the game, I watched every second of it. They just melted. It happens from time to time. Good teams melt in situations that they couldn't. Otherwise, they really controlled the game after the first couple of drives, and we had a lightning delay despite it being 35 degrees or whatever it was. Anyway, the Pokes are a different team than the ones that we saw pre-bye week, the one that got killed by South Alabama. since the bye week, in which they returned a bunch of starters and got guys in place. They're 4-0 with wins over Kansas State, Kansas, West Virginia, plus Cincinnati, but whatever. They are scoring 40.3 points per game versus 20.3 versus FBS teams for the bye. One of those games included Arizona State. Like, that's an opportunity to score a bunch of points, and they just weren't then because the offensive line wasn't right. Oklahoma, they haven't been right since coming off their bye. It's kind of a flip-flop situation here. Even in the first half against Iowa State before the Red River shootout, they gave a lot of points and a lot of yards. They were able to right the ship, but there was a flash of, what's happening here? They're lucky, I would say, to have beaten UCF. They lost to Kansas. I don't know, man. The defense just hasn't been there. Now, they lost Danny Stutzman, who's All-American caliber linebacker last week. Keep an eye on him. It's a leg injury. Stepped on somebody's cleat. Doesn't look to be serious, but he did not return to that game. And if he doesn't return, it's a major issue.
Brett, there's so many angles to talk about in these big rivalry games. We could go for like hours, and I would have so much fun doing it. I'll start with the committee rankings, as I said I would for some of these games. The committee has Oklahoma number 9, Oklahoma State number 22.
Oh, holy hell, I completely missed that. Number 9, Oklahoma, number 22, Oklahoma State. Wow, I just glossed over that.
And let me get to that, because I think there's a reason maybe you glossed over it. I don't have a huge issue with Oklahoma. I'd have the Sooners number 8 in my most deserving. I don't understand the love for the Cowboys from the committee. Like, hey, they're trending in the right direction. They're playing really well. I have Oklahoma State number 30 in my most deserving rankings. So they have the number 27 record achievement, the number 32 relative scoring margin. I love how Oklahoma State's playing right now. Really, really well. They're trending in the right direction. But based on resumes to date, I wouldn't have the Cowboys in my top 25. So the fact that the committee has them at 22, I haven't done the paper or the article yet for the lines, but Oklahoma State might end up in that article as a team that I think the committee has overranked by a significant margin. Enough of all of that, though, Brett. This is Bedlam. It means even more this year, as you said, since we don't know when or even if we'll get this game again. It's an absolute shame. The things that I am disliking the most about conference realignment, like more than anything, I don't like that we're losing regional conferences, but I can get over that. What I can't get over is we're losing Bedlam. We're losing the Apple Cup. We're losing the Civil War. We're losing these games that mean a ton to these fan bases and just college football, just like the history of the game. Like, these are the reasons we play and watch this game. And conference realignment and money is taking it away from us. It's very sad. So I'm going to enjoy this one. It's got a watchability score of 8.2. It's a top 10 game of the week for me. I'd argue it should have an even higher score, given the rivalry bonus that is not baked in, but I think maybe moving forward I need to figure out a way to do that. In addition to the right now indefinite bragging rights at stake, this game also carries massive Big 12 championship game implications. Oklahoma currently has the best chance to make it to Arlington at 73% per my current numbers. A win would see that figure go north of 80%, but a loss, and the Sooners would have just a 1-3 chance to make the champ game. Brett, that would be shocking for a team that just about a week ago was up around 90-ish%. Now you're talking about you lose this one, you're down to 33-ish. So it's big for Oklahoma. It's just as big for Oklahoma State. A win makes it a 50-50 proposition to play for the conference title, while a loss would leave the Cowboys with just a 1-10 chance to make it to Arlington. They'd really be behind the 8 ball here, so a huge opportunity for both these teams. Brett, I have Oklahoma minus 12 in this one. It's an 80% win expectancy. Oklahoma has fallen from number 2 to number 10 in the power ratings the past 2 weeks, following the 2-point home win against UCF and the 5-point loss in Lawrence. The Sooners' relative scoring margin is down to a season low number 6. That further emphasizes the recent downturn in form for this team. But my model thinks, Brett, as you mentioned, the market might be overcorrecting here, at least based on what the factors that I'm looking at over here. The Sooners' offense is still number 7 in the nation. The defense is number 24, both better than their opposition this week. Oklahoma State's won 4 games on the bounce, though. They're currently a season-best power rating 7.4 and corresponding ranking number 33. The Cowboys' offense and defense are both power-ranked season best as well, number 29 and number 46, respectively. So like I said, this team is playing great football. They're rounding into form. My issue with the committee ranking is their resume doesn't necessarily match that yet. Win this game, and it's a whole different conversation. These teams are definitely trending in opposite directions based on form. But on my current numbers, Oklahoma is the better team with the better offense. And this is the best offense that Oklahoma State's going to face all year. This game's in Stillwater. I'm a firm believer that winning on the road is the hardest thing to do in college football, especially when it's against your rival. but the model expects Oklahoma to bounce back this week. Bottom line, it's Oklahoma minus 12, 20% chance that Oklahoma State makes it 2 in a row against the Sooners in Stillwater.
I did have to pull up how Oklahoma State is trended in at least my aggregated power ratings.
Should be good.
Week 6, they bottomed out at 74. I had them ranked 1 point below FBS average. They're 28 this week.
Mm-hmm.
It is a linear, exponential increase.
Yep.
If you haven't, adjust your at least mind frame on Oklahoma State. They're a different team. They're playing really good football right now. Anyway, it's absolutely the square side. But this is an overplay for me. It went under. I know we saw it tick down a little bit, but I'm playing over the point total. Going to wait, certainly, to see it rebound before I hit that over. Oklahoma State, they're almost certainly selling out for this game. Their offense has picked it up. I think a lot of this underplay is just from season-long power rating metrics and not a snapshot of what they actually are. Like I just mentioned, Oklahoma's defense is regressing and is potentially without the best defender in the conference, at least the best player on their team, on their defense. The Pokes defense still gives up plenty of production. They've just played a couple of really bad teams lately. So let's close this rivalry out with some fireworks. Over for me. Going from Bedlam to, I think it's a fascinating matchup, but maybe not quite to the same degree. With Coastal Carolina now a 1-point road favorite at Old Dominion. This game carries an over-under 50.5 points. It kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. So we went from a lot of nationally broadcast games to, you got to go finding for it. The reason I think this game's interesting, though, there's a lot of factors to it. Grayson McCall was stretchered off with a scary injury a couple of weeks ago. Tim Beck said Sunday his gut tells him that McCall's career, sadly, is probably over with Coastal. And that doesn't mean that he's not playing football anymore. This is his last year of eligibility, so he has none left. So he can move on to the NFL. It was kind of a surprise that he came back this year. In hindsight, and I don't even mean injury, hindsight probably shouldn't have. Old Dominion has actually been pretty solid this year. I expected exciting things from them preseason. I just thought it was going to be from the offensive side, not the defensive side. They brought in the Fordham staff. That's an up-tempo, high-scoring, air-it-out type of system. But, Kelly, their defense has been really dang good in Norfolk. Mm-hmm. Jason Henderson, know that name. He should be on some sort of All-American list at the end of the season. He's the 4th leading tackler in the country, and I believe has set the career mark for tackles. Let me triple check that. He had almost the season mark, but missed the game due to injury. Almost beat Luke Kuechly is the one that still holds that. The defense overall is number 7 in EPA per rush allowed. So you can't run on them. Absolutely not. The resume, I think, is pretty decent too. Your resume rankings, you'll have them somewhere. But they beat Louisiana early on. They nearly upset Wake Forest. They beat App State, and then they gave James Madison a run for their money just last week. Coastal, they're coming off their best performance of the year, even without McCall. They held Marshall to just 4.0 yards per play and won 34-6. Pretty good. They forced 4 interceptions. That certainly helps in keeping a team just 6 points. Their backup quarterback, Jarrett Guest, played pretty well. 289 and 3, he hit a pick. But hey, I'll take that if you're putting up almost 300 yards and finding the end zone 3 times. The offense is a lot more multiple now than it was to start the season. I was on here saying fades him back. Their offense has no creativity. There had to have been a change of play caller. Trickett's probably the one calling the plays because they're multiple, they're exciting, they're creative. It's kind of gone back to what they were under Chadwell. At least they're trying. It's not the same system, but they're still trying to get the ball out, spread it around, make it, tons of motion. They're running a lot more option. I like what I see from their offense right now. Guest is probably going to have to carry the load in the offense, though, this game because, again, ODU's defense really stout against the run, but 129th in passing success rate allowed.
Yeah, Brett, this is 2 weeks in a row that my model projects Coastal to win outright as an underdog. Last week, the line was a little bit bigger and still had Coastal as the better team. Sean's got it done last week against Marshall, and now I have Coastal Carolina -7 on the road at Old Dominion. I know this Old Dominion team has exceeded, Vegas's line or performed well against the spread all year. I've got a 70% chance, though, for Coastal to win it outright. No Grayson McCall is still the story. It will be the rest of the year. But the offense is humming still by my numbers without him, improving 5 spots this past week and now ranked number 54. It's not just an offensive team in Conway these days, though, as you mentioned. The defense now ranks a season-best number 64. That said, Old Dominion is having a terrific year in their own right. At number 101 in the power ratings, this is the highest the Monarchs have been power ranked all season. The defense is the stronger of the two units, ranking number 77 compared to the offense, which is number 112. With James Madison ineligible for the Sun Belt Championship game, Georgia Southern is the favorite in the East Division. But the winner of this game will remain in the mix with only 2 losses in conference play. Bottom line, I have Coastal -7. It's a 70% chance that the Chants earn their first ever win against Old Dominion. Brett, they're currently 0-2 all time.
Yeah, that matters too. If you're looking at, hey, we haven't beaten this team, there's a little bit more get up for it. And I've been to SB Ballard Stadium. It's beautiful now. It was beautiful before. I have for a game when they upset Virginia Tech. Fun fact: it used to have this nice curve in it, but now it's like a little bit more modern. But it's really nice. Not much of a home field advantage there, to be honest. And it's not really that far away from Conway. So, I think I maybe gave him like a half point for the travel. But yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'm taking the opportunity to bet on an unknown in Jarrett Guest here before the market and before the power ratings catch up, because he looked pretty dang good. I think his offense has changed. I think his offense is different. It's a lot better. McCall worth a ton to the point spread. But enough for Coastal to have opened a dog here. And it moved through 0, and if they're -1 or +1, it doesn't matter. Like, hands down. 0 is a dead number. You cannot end on 0. So it doesn't matter if you see a -1 or a +1. Just treat it as a pick or whatever. Yeah, but I don't know that he's really worth as much as maybe as we thought. Or I'm hoping that at least the ratings in the market are overestimating his worth to the spread. Guess this kid, he throws the ball downfield, a 14.48 out last game. he's firing it downfield. This isn't dink and dump time. And I'd like to see him continue that against this porous ODU passing defense. This is Coastal on the money line for me. That's the way I'm going to go. All right, we have another huge blockbuster matchup. Boy, clear your slates, guys. Clear your Saturdays. You should be clearing your Saturdays, but especially this week. We have number 5, Washington, a 3.5-point road favorite at number 20, USC. This game carries a just lovely over-under 76 points. I was waiting to see what we're almost at 80. I love it. This game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. I know that the initial college football playoff rankings are pointless. They're meaningless. You talked about the dangers potentially of what that could do. How is USC still ranked? That's insulting to the rest of the teams that aren't ranked at all. They have near losses to Colorado and Arizona. They have 2 straight losses to better opponents. They gave up 49 to Cal and should have lost that game. Referees kept in that one. Nobody in the country other than USC would be ranked after that, and I have a major bone to pick on that front. I know it's not what we're here to talk about, but they got lucky breaks with officiating in Cal. It should have been a loss. By the way, a game that I had pointed out back in June, that was a trap for USC. For different reasons when it ended up unfolding that way, because they can't stop a nosebleed. But anyway, I want to know where this team's head is at. This is another game where it kind of breaks away from the X's and O's and the numbers. It's Lincoln Riley missed time last week with an illness. I don't think I've ever heard of a coach missing practice like that. Most college football head coaches are such lunatics that they will not miss unless somebody is dying. Lincoln Riley just missed a couple of times last week with the illness. Either way, their body language, their demeanor, it's crap from everybody. Chiefly Caleb Williams. Yes, he wears it on his sleeve. You see when he's not happy. Is this quit time for USC? I think it would have been if they would have lost to Cal, for sure. Washington comes into this game after a couple of close games that honestly really should not have been versus Arizona State and Stanford. I've heard fraud thrown around. I'm not sure that I'm there. Arizona State, that was a classic letdown spot after Oregon. And Stanford, I know they're bad, but they can move the ball and score if they get the opportunity to. So, I don't love laying the points when it comes to such a high variance game with this kind of total, but this is all Washington for me. What do you think?
Yeah, Brett, you mentioned the committee rankings. They have USC number 20, Washington number 5. My most deserving rankings, actually, I do have USC ranked at number 23. So they are hanging in there. I think last week I had them 24 maybe. Washington, is number 3 for me in the most deserving. So even though I think USC is misranked by more spots here, it's Washington that has the gripe, in my opinion, because the Huskies deserve to be in the top 4, and they aren't. Washington's number 3 in record achievement. They're number 13 in relative scoring margin, which is down from number 4 just a few weeks ago. So yes, the Huskies' form has declined in recent weeks, but the same resume, or the resume that they have, is still stronger than both Georgia's and Michigan's, teams that the committee has ranked above them. So I know it's just the first week. I'd be a little upset if I was a Washington fan. I'll just leave it at that, because Washington still has a lot of opportunity in front of them. All these ranked opponents that they're going to be playing, like, the committee values it so much. And well, here we go, Washington. You'll get your chance to play some of them starting this week. But here's the deal with that. If Washington beats USC, as Vegas thinks they will, USC's not going to be ranked next week. So all of a sudden, this ranked win, no, it's no longer a ranked win. Sorry, Washington. Because you beat the team that we said would be a good team for you to beat, because you beat them, we don't care about that win anymore. Like, that's why ranked wins make no sense. You can beat a team that the committee has ranked, and then they fall out, and it's like, well, we thought it was a good win, but as it turns out, it's not. Why? Because we beat them when we were supposed to? It just drives me nuts, dude.
Yeah, do note that you won't hear team has X ranked wins on this podcast. You won't hear Kelly ever say it in his ever. He doesn't have that in his vocabulary. And you won't hear it on this podcast.
It's the most flawed logic you could ever imagine, but it doesn't matter. Let's focus on the games. I have to be better about it. This game has a watchability score of 9.4. It's the number 3 game of the week for me. I can't wait, Brett. You said clear your Saturday schedules. Yes, guys, if you haven't cleared your Saturday schedule already, please clear all future Saturday schedules through the end of this calendar year. It's easy to see why this game is so high on the watchability. These are 2 top 15 power-rated teams. So again, the winner of this game is going to get some good credit in the most deserving rankings, because this is a good opponent. I know they're not playing well now, but it's still a good opponent for either one of these to pick up a win. My numbers make it a straight pick 'em. Trojans have a 51% win expectancy at home, actually, which I don't love, Brett, but that's what the numbers say right now. As the only undefeated team in Pac-12 play, Washington is in the driver's seat for a spot in Las Vegas. My numbers currently assign the Huskies a 77% chance to advance to the title game. A win here improves those chances to 95%, making Washington a near lock for that game. But a loss, of course, brings the Huskies back to the one-loss pack, and my numbers then assign just a 61% chance for Washington to make it. So big game for Washington. Even bigger for USC in this regard, at least. A win puts the Trojans at about 50-50 to make it to Vegas. A loss would drop the Trojans' chances all the way down to 1-10. It's a bit shocking, to be honest, Brett, for the preseason favorite in the Pac-12. Despite both these teams picking up wins last week, as we talked about, neither is in great form. USC's lost 2 out of 3, has a power rating of 15.6. That's a season worst. The offense is now number 3 after spending much of the season at number 1. And the defense has fallen to a new low, Brett. It's now number 70 nationally. At this point, I really don't have any other words to describe it other than it's just ridiculous what's happening with that USC defense and the changes that aren't being made about it. Washington has fallen from number 8 to number 13 in the power ratings in the past 2 weeks, following closer than expected wins against Pac-12 bottom feeders, Brett, if we're going to be honest about it, Arizona State and Stanford. The Oregon win was awesome for the Huskies, and it's great credit. In the committee's eyes, it's the, quote, best win, because Oregon is the highest ranked team that has a loss on their resume. But Washington needs to find that next gear again, and they need to find it soon, because after this one, the Huskies close with Utah, Oregon State on the road, and Washington State in the Apple Cup. The offense is number 4 nationally for the second consecutive week after spending 1 week at number 1 in my unit rankings. But it's the defense that has been showing some signs of regression here recently, Brett, at least for me. They're currently ranked number 32. It's the lowest I've had this unit since week 3. Bottom line, both offenses, being in the top 5, should have the advantage in this game. But the home field advantage is doing just enough in the model to offset USC's defense being the worst unit in this game. I have it as a pick'em, 51% win expectancy for the Trojans. And again, I don't love that, Brett. I don't love how either of these teams are playing. But if you're telling me right now, like, Kelly, who's going to go out and win this game, I have more faith in Washington to do that.
I'm with you. And I know when I deviate from the numbers and the stats and the model and things like that, some people tend to get on me and be like, well, this is narrative based. You can't. Guys, if you're not betting college football situational spots, then you're missing out on a lot of advantage. I write an upsets article every week. It's 18, 10, and 1 against the spread. I don't power rate those teams. I don't talk about EPA. It is situational, strictly situational. It's gone 5-1 the last 2 weeks. We're getting to the point where there's letdowns, look-aheads. Like, you got to take temperatures on these teams beyond just the numbers. And that's where this game falls for me. If you want some numbers, I can't trust USC's defense as far as I can throw them, that's for sure. Washington has multiple NFL weapons to score. Jalen Polk, maybe the most underrated player. Maybe not player, but most underrated wide receiver in the country. He's a beast. I've said it before, and I say it without hyperbole. This group of receivers for Washington reminds me of Ohio State when they had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jalen Polk reminds me a lot of Jackson Smith and Jigba in different ways, but in the fact that he's the young kid, the third quote-unquote option for this team, but maybe is the best one of the group. I don't know. I think Washington being able to score as efficiently as they can, and USC's defense being as porous as it can, forces Caleb Williams to be absolutely perfect. That is something he has absolutely not been this year. He's doing way too much. We went on a tangent last week, and it just continues. He takes too long in the pocket. He accounts for like 40% of his own sacks. Ridiculous. No one in the country is, I think, above 25%, and he's causing his own sacks. He's doing too much. I'm betting against Caleb Williams to be perfect this week. It's Huskies or nothing for me. I love to see a 3. I don't believe we're going to get a 3, but yeah, Washington with the points here. Our last FBS game that we have on an absolutely packed schedule. We're running a little long today, but that's all right. There's a lot to talk about. We have number 14 LSU at number 8 Alabama. The Crimson Tide are 3-point home favorites, and this game has an over-under of 60.5 points. It kicks off at 7:45 p.m. Eastern on CBS. I'm kind of happy that they're being honest about a kick time, because these main networks make you wait an extra 15 minutes because, they have a 4-hour broadcast block that they have to fill with less football because of the clock rules that I'm still not entirely over or on board with. Either way, 7:45 p.m. Eastern. Elite offense, porous defense versus elite defense and a very inconsistent offense in Alabama. I don't love how reliant Alabama is on long passing plays. When you take that away, what are they? They don't have multiple ways to beat you, and I look for teams offensively that have multiple ways to beat you. But is LSU's secondary the unit to prevent Jalen Milroe from passing for 35 yards per attempt? I don't know. Zy Alexander's out indefinitely. Deuce Chestnut left the team for personal reasons, so they're down a couple of secondary pieces there. LSU has the 4th lowest sack rate in the SEC, but Milroe has the 2nd highest pressure to sack ratio in the country, so they do have an opportunity to improve on that. He takes too long to throw. He moves into sacks, etc. Because, when you're throwing the long ball, it takes longer for your receivers to get open. I do think his receivers that I was not overly impressed with in the preseason have been playing pretty well. Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond have found their stride lately, especially, again, as those down the field kind of guys. Man, Kelly, I would have loved to see Jalen Milroe with the Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, etc. Group. That'd have been a lot of fun. Anyway, I digress. I saw what this team can be in the second half against Tennessee. Took a nice live bet on them at almost even money, which was hilarious. But can Alabama be that consistently? Haven't seen it this year yet. Their pass rush does play a pivotal role, of course, as it has all season. Jaden Daniels has a 22% pressure to sack ratio, and that's too high for me. When you look at it, 20% or lower is what I'd like to see from quarterbacks. There was an interesting graph that came out, and again, I forget the person that tweeted. I'm very sorry. I love to give credit where credit is due. But they basically looked at quarterbacks that have worked in the NFL recently and have not worked. And there's a very clear divide between what is your pressure to sack ratio. If you're taking too many sacks, you may not work out the next level. Jaden Daniels is putting up Heisman numbers. He's a front runner for good reason. He's carrying this offense. Outstanding player, electric season. But that pressure to sack ratio is a little bit concerning when you're moving forward. And against Alabama's pass rush, that's very concerning to me this week specifically. However, Alabama's not played a quarterback nearly as dangerous in both passing and rushing as Jaden Daniels all season. Could have been KJ Jefferson, but Dan Enos just didn't want him to play football. They have not played an offense nearly as good as this. Right now, LSU's probably the best defense or offense in the country. Defense, yeah, right. Best offense in the country. I'm interested to know where your numbers fall on that. But the Alabama secondary, they're going to have their hands full. Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, they're outstanding. Brian Thomas still has a perfect passer rating when targeted. Malachi Moore, the safety for Alabama, really good player. Should be back in the lineup, but he's been in and out with some injuries. Alabama currently rated number 1, PFF's best coverage team in the country.
LSU, Alabama at night, Brett. Whether it's in Death Valley or Bryant-Denny, it's seemingly always one of the most highly anticipated games of the college football season. I'm not even an SEC fan, a fan of either of these teams. I'm a fan of college football, though, Brett, and of good college football. Most years, it doesn't get much better, bigger than this one. It's no different this year. Watchability score of 9.8. It's the number 1 game of the week for me. Number 7 game of the entire regular season, Brett. We talked about with the Georgia-Missouri game, SEC on CBS, 3:30 Eastern. Like, that's the classic spot, and I agree. But actually, over the last decade plus, Alabama, LSU, at 8 o'clock on SEC or on CBS, like, that is where it belongs to. I'm with you. I'm with you on the actual timing. I've never seen that before. 7:45. Like, I've never seen that advertised.
They're being honest, is what it is. They're just not lying to people, I guess.
I'm down with it. Yeah. Hey, I'm here for it. But dude, this game, it means so much every year, and I'm so excited for it. This is one of my favorite games to watch every single year. And again, I'm not even a fan of either of these teams. It's pretty simple for Alabama. Win this game and make your travel plans for a trip to Atlanta in early December. The Tide also need to win this game to keep their college football playoff hopes alive as well. However, an LSU win makes things more interesting in the SEC West. It sets up a scenario in which there could end up being a 3-way tie among LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. But the Rebels still have a trip to Athens on the schedule, so a Tigers win in this one would give LSU a critical head-to-head advantage over Alabama that could ultimately be the key to sending LSU to Atlanta for a second consecutive year. I have Alabama minus 2.5. It's a 57% win expectancy for the Crimson Tide. Alabama's currently power rated number 9 in my model. The Crimson Tide haven't finished a season ranked that low since 2008. That was Nick Saban's second year in Tuscaloosa. I've talked about this before. Alabama doesn't have to be better than the previous versions of itself. The Tide only have to be better than the teams on their schedule this year. And with a 38% chance to finish the regular season 11-1, that's exactly how the model evaluates this team currently. Alabama's offense is currently power rated number 20. It's 16 spots worse than in the preseason, but 9 spots better than 5 weeks ago. So as has been the case for the majority of Saban's tenure, it is the defense that's carrying this team. They're ranked number 5 nationally for the 3rd straight week, and it's that unit that's going to have to play lights out on Saturday night because this LSU team has the best offense that the Tide will face all season based on my current numbers. Believe it or not, Brett, I talked about this with Kansas State. My power rating suggests that this LSU's team is actually better than the 2022 version that beat the Crimson Tide and won the West. LSU's current power rating of 22.0 is their best since they finished the 2019 national championship season with a rating of 35.9. That's among the best ever for any college football team in my historical rating set. It starts with an offensive unit that ranks number 2 nationally behind only Oregon. Much like this is the best unit that the Alabama defense will face all season, the Alabama defense is the best opposing unit that the Tigers offense will face this season based on my current numbers. It's a strength-on-strength matchup. Should be phenomenal. It's a big reason why this game has such a high watchability score. Both teams were off last week, so neither has the rest advantage per usual in this matchup, which I love. The difference for me in this game, Brett, comes down to 2 things, for the model at least. The LSU defense, it's number 56. It's the only unit ranked outside the top 20 nationally in this game. And the game's in Tuscaloosa. Bottom line, Alabama minus 2.5, 43% chance that LSU pulls off the upset for the 2nd year in a row in what's one of my favorite games of the college football season.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's one of your favorite games of the college football season. I agree with you, but this is one of my favorite college football games on the slate. The FCS game that I love highlighting each and every week. We have number 1 South Dakota State on the road at number 11 North Dakota State. Game kicks off at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+, or if you're listening from North Dakota, your local ABC station. Okay, we talked about South Dakota State last week. I like to mix this up because we only feature one FCS game a week. But this game is played for the Dakota Marker Trophy, and that's just too good of a name to pass up. So I had to bring it back here. It's weird to see North Dakota State ranked outside the top 10, though. In South Dakota State, unanimous number 1. They are. We talked about it. I don't remember if it was online or offline last week about how South Dakota State sits among like mid-level P5 teams, like in terms of power this year, just because they are really that good. A little bit on the Dakota marker trophy. It is a replica of the real state boundary marker between North and South Dakota. The trophy was created in 2004 when both teams moved up from D2 to the FCS together. North Dakota State, very good defense. That's been a staple for the past, since 2004. They've always had a really good defense. They have the best graded pass rush in the Missouri Valley Conference, but tackling's been an issue. They have not been able to tackle worth a damn this year. And that's an issue against South Dakota State's running game. I think the Jackrabbits run away with this one again, like they have in every other game. A win here nearly secures the Missouri Valley Conference title for South Dakota State. Youngstown State, should they win, technically can still win it, and the two play next week. What do your FCS light numbers say about this one?
Well, first, what's up, Horizon League full-time member Youngstown State, hanging in that conversation. I love it. Number 1 power-rated South Dakota State, -8.5 versus number 3 power-rated South Dakota State. Brett, I'm not a huge FCS guy. I'm just not. I mean, you are to the next level, but even I can get excited about this one. I know North Dakota State isn't the power this year that they've been in recent years, and South Dakota State is that power this year. I mean, they're among the top 25, top 30 best teams in all of college football, regardless of level.
Yep.
So this is an awesome game. I love the trophy, the rivalry, the trophy. It's all awesome. This is one that even I, as an FBS snob, if you will, can get excited about here. This should be a really fun game in the FCS ranks. And I guess I'm rooting for North Dakota State so that Youngstown State keeps in that race and has a little bit better chance. So there's a little bit of personal bias at the FCS level, I guess.
Yeah, and this game's played indoors at the Fargo Dome, so we're not dealing with, sadly, the upper Midwest chills and snow, which I believe this game should be played in. But that does help. It probably helps both teams, but it doesn't disadvantage North Dakota State. Let's put it that way.
Football should be played outdoors, Brett. I give you that.
Football
but honestly, I think in Fargo, North Dakota, I think for just the health and safety of all involved, that's the student athletes, the coaches, the fans, the administrators, the refs, I think it's probably just best to have an indoor facility. Now, if you can get a retractable roof kind of deal, I know that costs a ton of money. That would be awesome. But I just think for the safety, I understand why this one's indoors, even though I agree it should be outdoors.
Well, of the 3 Division I teams that are in North and South Dakota, of the 4 teams that are in North and South Dakota, 3 of them have domes. So it's there. Right. But go tell that to the Montana schools that both play outside. Anyway, that's a show. That's a good packed show. Packed slate for Saturday. Be sure to hop on over to our Discord server where you can connect with over 4,000 sports betting fans and get live updates in our college football channel. There you can join a sharp and very active community. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lines YouTube for weekly college football odds and betting videos for the remainder of the season. Subscribe to us on your podcasting app of choice. Drop us a good review if you like the show, and let us know down in the comments where you land on each of these games. Again, packed slate. I'm sure you got a lot of opinions specifically on the Dakota marker battle. That's where I want to hear your leans on there. Kelly, before we close up shop, please let everybody listening know where they can find your work.
Yep. On X at KFord Ratings, the website KFordRatings.com, and of course, as always, over at thelines.com with some college football articles. Absolutely love being a part of the team. Love doing the show with you, Brett. It's November, somehow, some way. We've got a crazy end of the season here. It always is, and I cannot wait for it.
I'm with you. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I'm Brett Gibbons. That's Kelley Ford. We'll see you all next time.